to a French Collection podcast, a go-to podcast for everything on France, hosted by me, Annette Charlton. With guests, candid insights into living in France, travel discussions and more, our show will transport you to the land of cheese and croissants. So now let's dive into our next episode. Hello, thank you for joining me. Today we're going to have a look at the new 2021 trends in purchasing property in France from someone who is in the know, someone who knows about these sorts of things. So are you thinking of perhaps purchasing property in France or wondering if the pandemic has affected the French property market? Maybe you want to know what the new trends are for 2021. I wanted to find out a bit more too, so I chatted with Joanna Leggett, Marketing Director of Leggett Immobilier, the leading international estate agency in France, for her ideas. She goes on to tell us how buyer demands have shifted due to the pandemic and where the new hotspots in France are. So let's look at how the pandemic is shaping demand. Wealthy investors see lasting life changes after COVID-19 was the headline to a research paper published by UBS Wealth Management recently. The report shows how buyer needs have shifted dramatically and helps us gaze into that crystal ball to see what's in store for the French property market in the coming years. 3/4 of those polled said that they anticipate permanent lifestyle shifts, and of course, property is central to how this change will be implemented. Leggett has seen record sales figures over the last 12 months, and it's clear that the data in this research is accurately reflecting buyer demand. More than 3,750 investors were quizzed on how they plan to adjust their lifestyle after the pandemic. Here are the three main findings. Number 1, 70% of people polled will reduce travel and trips to the office. Joanna says her agents are seeing record demand across the country, even from the UK, despite travel restrictions. It's noticeable further, she says, that no matter which country the inquiry comes from, an increasing number of clients are looking for properties with plenty of outside space, and also with the ability to work from home. This means having plenty of room for a dedicated home office, and also having stable and fast broadband connection is important. President Macron has introduced a strategic broadband plan, where the government has committed to providing fast, a minimum of 30 MB, broadband for everybody by the end of next year and fibre optic by 2025. Additional research, this time from BNP Paribas, also highlights that buyers are now placing greater importance on both better digital connection and a dedicated room for work. With home working still being recommended by many governments, this is a trend that is really likely to grow. Secondly, half of those polled intend to move closer to family. We all know that travel restrictions and government lockdowns have brought home just how important it is to be close to family. This means an increase in demand for rural property. Cheaper prices mean more space. And for those at the top end of the market, country estates with more than one property on the grounds. Once again, both pieces of research show the same findings, with UBS stating that 81% of people looking to move now attach more importance to outdoor space. Number 3, 46% may forsake cities for less populated areas. I mean, that's quite a population shift, says Joanna. We're not sure that the figures will be quite that high once the dust has settled, but for sure, rural property sales are booming. Many of our buying clients are coming from major cities and are looking to either move permanently or to have a second home in the country that they can use for extended periods of time. Some press outlets speculated that the 90-day rule, brought in after Brexit, would dampen demand from the UK. But the truth is that it hasn't. Even though second home owners are increasing the length of their stay and using their holiday home to work from. 3 months is an ample period for most people. Of course, there are exceptions, but they have not significantly impacted demand. Joanne goes on to share with us there are 4 French departments that are tipped for growth in the next 12 months. Orne. Normandy is the centre of the French equestrian industry. It boasts a 60-kilometre-long stud farm trail and has over 300 horse riding centres and 31 hippodromes. We've seen a huge rise, she says, in demand for equestrian properties as they tend to have plenty of space, and buyers have decided that now is a good time to fulfil their dreams. The Orne department is in the centre of the equestrian industry, as it hosts the Haras du Pin National Stud. Nicknamed the Versailles for horses, it's the oldest stud in France and is intrinsically linked with France's royal history and the thoroughbred industry. With an average price of €1,174 per metre square, property here is exceptional value for money. Morbihan. Our team in Brittany, says Joanna, has never been busier, and we are recruiting across the region even. One hot spot is the beautiful department of Morbihan, with many buyers drawn towards the coastal area around the Gulf, with its warm climate and picturesque islands. The truth is that wherever you buy in this area, you will never be far from the coast, while the hustling towns of Vannes, Lorient and Pontivy provide plenty of bars, shops and restaurants. The cathedral in Vannes is spectacular, as is the historic old town with its half-timbered houses. The average property price in Morbihan is €2,278 per metre square. Charente. This is a hidden gem of a department. Many international buyers heading to neighbouring Charente-Maritime for the beaches, or the Dorange for its familiarity due to the TV shows. However, they're missing out, she thinks, on the beautiful area that's dominated by one of the prettiest rivers in France. The landscape is of rolling vineyards and sunflower fields. The department capital is a walled city that every year hosts the Circuit des Ramparts, the classic car race. This attracts visitors from around the world and is a spectacular event. Meanwhile, the nearby town of Cognac is home to some of the biggest brand names in the world. Think Remy Martin, Hennessy, Martell. And there's also the beautiful Corvasseur Chateau in the pretty riverside town of Jarnac. Property in this department is terrific value at only €1,198 per metre square. The High Alps. This is another department that is sometimes overlooked by its neighbours. When you think of the Alps, you'll probably picture the famous resorts a little further north. However, within this department, Joanna says you'll find wonderful ski resorts such as Ski Chevalier. You will have about 250 kilometres of slopes to choose from, as well as some of the most modern and effective snow cannons in France. These extend the season and help rental yields. The skiing is exceptional, and the historic town of Briançon boasts several buildings classified as UNESCO World Heritage Sites. The average property price is €2,394 per metre square. So after chatting with Joanna, I learnt a lot, and I want to say thanks to Joanna for her hot tips on the new trends in purchasing property in France and what is new for 2021. And now a word from our sponsor, A French Collection Tours. Thinking of visiting France? A French Collection Tours offer inspirational, luxurious escorted all-women tours to Paris, Normandy, Brittany and Provence. Imagine 7 days with a small group of like-minded women exploring the wonders of France. These fun and exclusive tours focus on culture and art, great food and drink, authentic locations and market trips and boutique shopping. A French Collection Tours are perfect to relax and unwind, re-energise and invigorate, with everything taken care of for you. Your host, Annette Charlton, has lived part-time in France with her family for over 11 years and knows how to ensure your tour is perfect. Whether it's bucket list items or secret places Annette knows about, you will truly love the Parisian vibe. And if you want to experience Brittany like a local, then walking quaint towns, beach walks will delight you. Or if the warmth of the south of France appeals to you, then you'll be spoiled amongst the charming villages and ancient sites on a French collection tour. So if you're thinking of travelling to France, take a look at a French collection tours and create your lasting memories while having the time of your life. Find out more at www.afrenchcollection.com. Following on from Joanna's hot tips and new trends for 2021, when you're buying a house, French translation can be a very important part of the legal process. So let's have a look at that. Buying a house in France. You know, of course, that speaking French will be an advantage when buying a home in France. But if you're not fluent or you don't have a solid understanding of legal jargon, then a good French translation service can be very helpful. I talked to an expert in translation services, Sean from Day Translations, to get his tips on how a translation service can help when buying a house in France. He goes on to tell us, possibly you've experienced trouble in buying property even in your own country, so you'll understand how much more difficult it is to buy a house in a foreign country such as France, where the language and the system is quite different. Anywhere you go, it's advisable to be familiar with how the real estate laws and how the property market in the particular country operates. His tips for a foreign buyer. If you are not from France, it's vital that you are familiar with the system because it is not the same as the home purchase system in your country. Language is also a problem, so you'll need the services of a translation company. Even if you can speak and understand French, the French legal language may not be quite up your alley. Cultural differences also play a role when purchasing a home in France. And since you're not a native, it's crucial that you have the required controls and checks to ensure that your investment is actually worth the price. Another thing that you need to know is the role of the notaire, which is not the same as a solicitor in England or Australia and many other countries, or the same as a legal officer in the United States. The French notaire is a public official appointed by the government to ensure that the taxes on the transfer of the property are properly collected. The fees depend on the value of the property and the scale rate is fixed by law. Notaires can charge an additional fee if they feel that they've rendered work beyond their standard task. So it's better to look for your own notaire when buying a home in France instead of using the notaire suggested by the vendor. This avoids putting you at a disadvantage, especially if the notaire is regularly used, perhaps by the vendor. The notaire must see to it that all the parties understand the terms included in the contract that they sign. The notaire is referred to as a judge of the non-contentious. As such, a notaire is a representative of the French government who should uphold the law strictly. Having said that, you as the foreign buyer have the right to fully understand what you are signing. Therefore, professional translation services are needed to ensure the deed of sale is in your own language. Completion of the sale. Purchasing a home in France is quite a formal process. When the sale has been closed and the deed of sale is to be signed, the French notaire requires the presence of the seller and the buyer. A power of attorney is acceptable provided it is legalised, properly identifying the involved parties. The notaire reads the deed of sale in its entirety and sees to it that both parties understand all the terms included in the contract. The notaire signs the deed together with the buyer and seller. Because the notaire is a judge, the deed of sale is equivalent to a court order, signifying the property sale's validity. Acting as a judge differentiates a French notaire from a solicitor or a legal officer. The notaire looks after the interests of the government, while a solicitor or legal officer looks after a client's interests. It's the responsibility of the French notaire to inform a non-French speaking buyer to secure assistance from a language services provider. When the transaction is complex, the notaire may insist on having a bilingual lawyer present also. There should be an interpreter, for example, French to English, to ensure that the English-speaking buyer fully understands all the details included in the deed of sale. Translation of the deed of sale into the buyer's native language protects the buyers before they sign the deed. In some cases, the notaire can insist on using a court-appointed translator, but should provide an estimate of how much the translator's fee should be. The buyer and/or the seller pay the fee for the language services, or the two parties might split the translator's fee. So it's a good idea to use the assistance and the expertise of a translation company that provides legal translation services when buying a French home and signing a property contract. And of course, you should always rely on your own investigation and the services of the appropriate people to help you in any legal or financial transactions or property purchases. So that's our look at property trends in 2021 in purchasing a property in France, as set out by Joanna, and also the ideas of how a French translation service may assist you if you are going to purchase property in foreign country. And so that brings us to the end of another podcast and our time together. Thanks for listening. I've really enjoyed your company, and I look forward to sharing more on France and all things French with you next week. Until then, you can head over to the blog at www.afrenchcollection.com for the full blog post. And so it's merci from me, and à bientôt.